The first time I met Euronymous was in Ski, outside of Oslo, south of Oslo. Harald of Immortal and me decided to drive from Bergen to Oslo and visit him, and we did. We came to Ski, let's call it that. That's the correct Norse pronunciation. We came to Ski, and it turned out that Harald, who was the one corresponding with Euronymous, hadn't brought his address. So we had no idea where he lived. And we decided to just ask someone in the street, you know, do you know some guys who look like this and that? And so we saw some middle-aged women, and we asked them, do you know where Øystein Aarseth lives? He, you know, had black hair, metal guy. And to our big surprise, they knew. And one of them asked us to follow her in her car. And we thought that, well, that was lucky, you know, maybe he just lives, you know, up the street or something, because why else would she know who he was? And she drove for at least 10 minutes. And we followed her, and finally she stopped, and she pointed to an old farm building, and she said, up there. And we thought that, well, okay. And before we had the time even to say thank you, she just sped off. So we drove the last kilometer or so up to the house and knocked on the door. And out came Euronymous. And he was friendly and kind and invited us in. He knew Harald. And we were invited to stay there for a few days. And during our stay we talked, and he was a nice guy. But Parolin, you know, dead, he was also living there, and he just stayed in his room most of the time. He didn't want to talk to Euronymous, or at first we thought that he didn't want to talk to us, but after a while we realized that he didn't want to talk to Euronymous, because when Euronymous was there, he stayed in his room. But if Euronymous left, then he came out, which was rather weird. He also came out when there was food. And they had a setup there for mayhem. They had a big room where they were supposed to rehearse for mayhem. Drum kit, guitars, everything. It was a real ideal situation for a band. They had their own house, no neighbors, and they could rehearse. But Hallhammer had moved from the house. He didn't want to stay there. And Jørn, the Stubberud, the drummer, necro butcher, according to Euronymous, he was just smoking hashish and staying with his girlfriend. And we understood that something was amiss here. He was talking down necro butcher. And when we asked about Hallhammer, he also talked him down. He told that he had moved to Oslo to screw sluts. That's his words. That was his main priority. He would rather go around in the you know, pubs in Oslo and pick up sluts to screw them than stay with Mayhem and rehearse with them. So got this impression that something was not working very well. Later on, as I mentioned in my last video, Euronymous was rather useless when it comes to transportation. So when we came with a car, he used that opportunity, and we drove him to Jørn Stubberud, necro butcher. We drove him to Hallhammer, and we drove him all over the place. And the good side of it was, of course, that we got to meet some cool guys, and then the next day, I think maybe he invited them, or maybe they came by their own will, I don't remember, but Ivar and the vocalist, I don't remember his name, of Darkthrone showed up. And they came with their new album. They were really proud, Soulside Journey, and they wore jogging pants and looked like these typical trendy death metalers at the time. And Euronymous told them what he meant, and he really, really butchered them. He just, this is not how metal people are supposed to look, and he gave them this metal preach, so to speak. And they left with their, backs bent. I remember I drove them home, and it was kind of weird. And then Harald and me went to some military camp and picked up Padden, the drummer of Old Funeral, because he was doing his military service at the time, and we drove him to their house, and we talked some more, and Euronymous was expressing how he disliked the development in the metal scene, that it was no longer something special, it was becoming a stupid trend with people wearing light jogging pants and singing about Coca-Cola, and it was a bit we had never thought about that. We didn't really. What we had a problem with was that all the bands started to sound the same. So we had problems with the same bands, but not for the same reason. Our concern was that all the death metal bands had started to sound the same. They even went to the same studio to get the exact same sound. They wanted to sound alike. But we agreed that there was something wrong with them, so to speak. We didn't like them. So we found a common ground there. And as you know, after 3 days, fish and guests start to stink. So we left. And I had promised him to send him some shotgun shells, because he had a shotgun, but he didn't have any shells. So I sent some shotgun shells to him, packed in like a Christmas gift. It was a bit late for Christmas, Yule, but they were just done for fun. And then we didn't hear from him for, 6 months. Finally, Euronymous wrote a letter to Harald, and me, by the way, and he told that Dead had killed himself, and he blamed the jogging pants wearing metal guys. He claimed that he had been sick and tired of them, and so forth, which of course is absolute bullshit. And this caused even more conflict within Mayhem, because the other guys in Mayhem knew perfectly well that this was not true. But Euronymous wanted to use this to push his agenda. And the next time we met him was in Oslo. He had opened his shop, Helvete, and he was having some sort of party there. Or rather, there was a Morbid Angel concert. And therefore, a lot of guys from all over Norway were gathered there, because the concert was held in Oslo. So we met a lot of different guys, and it turned out that pretty much everybody were so-called racist. They were anti-immigration, they were pro-nationalist, and we cultivated this. And Euronymous felt at odds with the rest, and this was a start of a tiny conflict, but it wasn't that important, really. At this point, we realized that he had a big flag from Deutsche Demokratische Republik, the DDR on the wall, and he wore this communist buttons. But Hellhammer, he had a white power button, so it was a bit strange. And everybody in this party setting was on Hellhammer's side. So this was the second time I met Euronymous. Then I sent him my demo tape, and he wanted to release it. So the third time he came to Bergen to join me when I recorded the album. And he had this t-shirt that was cut, so his belly was showing, and he looked completely disgusting, but his fat belly was hanging out, and but anyway, he was joining me in the studio just because he was the record label. I recorded the album real fast, and for the fun of it, I let him play a lead on one of the tracks, just, improvised a lead, the war track. The war track was, by the way, made as a tribute to Bathory. Therefore the title War, and therefore the similar sound. Many, for some weird reason, have asked me or have believed that this was a cover track by me. I mean, a Bathory cover, but of course it's not. It's not even close to anything Bathory has done. It's just a similar sound. And things were going fine really for some time. He was behaving like a normal person, and the conflict didn't really start until we had published or released the album, and it sold out real quick, but he failed to print more albums because of his shop. It was a big black hole, a financial black hole. It sucked all the money out, and then he didn't have the money to print the album again. He had been forced to borrow money from me to print it the first time. So not only did he fail to print more albums, he also failed to pay me back. He also failed to pay me the royalties. So it was just a complete fiasco. But I wanted to help him to get things working, because what else could I do? So I visited him more often, like I told in my last video, and eventually realized that this was a dead end. So I made my own album, Simmerfane Productions, and planned to release my albums on Simmerfane from there on. And this was, of course, seen by him as a huge betrayal, because as in his eyes, he had signed this completely insignificant, unheard of band, Burzum. And because of him, because I was signed to his label, I had become not famous, but in the underground movement, it had become a huge thing. Because Darkthrone released A Blaze in the Northern Sky in February 1992, and Burzum came with the debut album in March, 1 month later. But from March until September, no other album was released in this genre. So this was the only band he promoted. It was released on his record company, and it was supposed to be, this is how it's supposed to sound. He was, promoting it that way. This was protests against death metal. So he had invested a lot of energy and prestige in this project, and now I was abandoning him, he felt. And of course I was. He was a complete failure as a record company. But he saw it as a betrayal. And that's when the conflict started. And then after I had done this media stunt that I talked about in my other video, and I was released, my record company was in ruin because the police had just taken everything and messed up everything. So I agreed to hand him all the orders and let him release the album. I did that because he had made a deal with a proper distribution service, Voices of Wonder. So it was no longer in his hands. His incompetence would no longer ruin it. So I agreed to do it. I wasn't overly happy about it, but I agreed to do it. And I handed him all the pre-orders for the album, all the money for the pre-orders. And as I gave it to him, he went to the bank to cash in all the, because this was all foreign money that was sent by mail. Not a very legal way to do it, but that was how it was done in the underground. And of course, all this money went straight down his financial black hole. And he'd never sent any of the records to those who had pre-ordered. And of course, they had sent the money to me. So I was responsible. So they were pissed at me. And I was pissed at him because he screwed them. So that was part of the conflict. And I talked about most of the other things yesterday, I think. But when we recorded De Mysteris Dum Satanas, Attila from Hungary, great nation, visited, and we picked him up. I was there. We picked him up at the train station in Oslo. And he was, according to him, he was very disappointed when he met Euronymous. He saw me, I'm a tall guy, and then next to me we had this midget-like creature who looked like Asterix from Asterix and Obelix. And he was so disappointed. And he told us, not Euronymous, but he told Hellhammer, he told me. And it didn't really go very well at that point. This was in September 1992, by the way, so long before the media thing. And we talked. When Euronymous was not there, he expressed what he felt, and Hellhammer, this is kind of funny really, or rather ironic. Hellhammer expressed how he really should have just killed Euronymous and get rid of him, which is kind of interesting considering what actually happened. And we were laughing about it. It was mainly proposed as a joke, but with a serious undertone, because Euronymous was holding Mayhem back. He never let Hellhammer do any interviews. He always talked shit about Hellhammer behind his back, and always gave people the impression that he was Mayhem and that Hellhammer was just some drummer that he could replace like this. In reality, as we all know, there's no chance in hell anybody would be able to replace Hellhammer as a drummer, because he's rather unique as a drummer. You can say whatever you want about him, but his drumming was pretty awesome. And then we drove the car to Bergen, where we were supposed to record the album, or rather record the... Wait a minute. I think maybe I'm mistaken here. I think we recorded the album in September, but Attila came at another point in time. I think I just told you, not a lie, but I gave you some wrong information. Attila came at another point. I didn't record it when we were recording it. So he might have come in 1993. I'm not sure. Or maybe I'll check the sources and put some text up here. Anyway, when Attila came, we went to my place, and he brought some tapes, and he showed us some tapes with his music, and this was some really cool underground techno music. And I liked it, Hallhammer liked it, but Euronymous did not like it. So there was this tension, and we pretty much only played this type of music when we were there. So Euronymous felt like an outsider. The other ones, we had a great time, but he was, you know, an outsider. And then Attila recorded the vocals. Yeah. Sorry, I don't really remember the order of things here. What happened first and second. I don't remember when exactly Attila came to record the album, so I'm messing up a little bit here. I don't know where to put it in context. Well, after Euronymous had recorded, after Attila had recorded the vocals, the conflict had escalated. I don't really remember how much time this is, but I think this must have been after the media case, where everybody had started to be rather negative towards Euronymous because of his blunders in that context. And Euronymous was struggling. He wanted to finish the Mayhem album, but nobody in Bergen wanted to have him stay at their place. Which kind of shows how unpopular he was. He called Harald, he called me, and we didn't want him to stay at our place because of we no longer really liked him. And we rather detested him. And of course this, I felt sorry for Hallhammer because he was also coming. But we really didn't want to have Euronymous at our place, so no. He had to stay at a hotel. And nobody bothered to meet up with him. He visited Bergen, nobody bothered to talk to him. So he wasn't very popular at the time. And of course, all of this was, in his eyes, my fault. Because, as I explained yesterday, in that other video. And then Snorre, the guitarist of Mayhem, moved from Trondheim to Bergen, and for some time he stayed at my place. Because, you know, it takes some time to find a place to stay. So he stayed on the couch in my living room, and he talked to Euronymous on the phone. Not very often, but every now and then, because he was the guitarist of Mayhem. And one day, Euronymous called and told him that he wanted to get rid of me. I had become too much of a problem to him. And Snorre, he was a rather strange character. Obviously, in hindsight, you can say he had mental problems. And he called me over, you know, listen to this. And I was standing there listening to Euronymous telling how he wanted to kill me. So, a lot of people in the black metal scene and the death metal scene in Norway knew that Euronymous had plans to kill me. He had told them. He had not told everybody. He had told the people he trusted. But and they could have told me, and that would have been second-hand information. But I had first-hand information. I heard it from him. He called his guitarist and told him. So this was in the evening. Snorri and a friend of ours had rented some movies, and we had bought pizza. We were planning to watch some movies on the video VHS. This is old school movies, and I was really pissed off. What the fuck was he thinking? You know, he wanted to get rid of me. And he also told Snorri that he planned to use the contract, because I had really never signed the Bursum contract. So in theory, I could just take my record, and he would have his record company, but he would have lost Bursum, the only band he had that was success at the time. And he didn't want that. So he wanted me to sign the contract, and he wanted to use that as a pretext to get close to me, because I didn't even answer his phone calls anymore. I didn't want anything to do with him. So he wanted me to he wanted to use this contract as an excuse to get close to me. And then he wanted to take this stun gun that he had ordered from the USA and knock me out, tie me up, put me in the trunk of a car, and then torture me to death whilst filming it. And one of the reasons we didn't like him was because he was enjoying these snuff movies, looking at people who tortured others and so. He was a complete pervert. And of course, I heard this from him. Not a second-hand information. I heard it directly from him in the phone. So I figured, well, fuck him. I'm going to take this contract, I'm going to sign it, going to go there, give it to him when he's not expecting it, because if I did, then he would not have a trap ready. And this weird Snorri character, of course, who was the guitarist of Mayhem, said that, well, he wanted to join me because he had some new riffs to show. Okay, so we left, and we drove to Oslo I wanted to give him the contract to get rid of his pretext to get close to me and execute his plan. But I'll talk about that some other time, I guess. I have already talked about it, I think in the Until the Light Takes Us video, the documentary. So, for now, bye-bye.